It's just all attack augments. That's it. That's the video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, so for real this time, I want to dive into the reason of why we only want attack augments and one sharpness augment for comfort, and provide you all with some mathematical reasoning, emphasis on some. So 1 week ago I posted saying that I'd be playing through the game without mods, but as of today I'm breaking that promise, because for demonstrative purposes I'm actually using an overlay. And gasp, I know, cheater, report me to the Capcom police, but let me show you what I'm talking about before you put me behind bars. So in the background you'll notice we're fighting a Congalala, and on our overlay we can see the total damage dealt, the DPS, and the type of damage we're dealing. Now in terms of what is applied where, any of our normal attacks are applied into the physical section, all sound wave and bubble shock waves are added into the fixed section, and any elemental damage we do is applied to the elemental section. So in theory, we can use this to measure average differences across multiple hunts and different setups to see if one Artian setup is better than the other. And that's just what we're going to be doing today, so let me share my data with you. For a baseline, we need to understand the beginning rolls for Artian weapons. We combine 3 different parts with different attributes and augments to create a base weapon. If we want to make a fire elemental hunting horn, it would benefit us to use 3 fire pieces for better base elemental stats. But what about the Artian piece augments? Well, in the current game state, it's easier for us to stack affinity on our armor than it is raw attack, so we'll want to use attack augments for our base crafting materials. In fact, 3 attack pieces should be the ideal setup for all Artian horns as of this game version, whenever this video is posted. Next, we can reinforce our weapon with materials to roll 5 additional random augments. The choices here are sharpness increases, attack increases, affinity increases, or elemental and status increases. So what do we want? Well, if we already are able to achieve 100% affinity from our armor, then we can remove the affinity rolls from our desired options. And with how little white sharpness we get, we don't want to dedicate slots to sharpness management on the weapon, so for now we can hope to at least get 1 sharpness roll for comfort. So really it comes down to attack or element and status rolls. And if we want to make a raw hunting horn, then the decision is really simple. We can't roll element increases, so we only want 7 attack augments and 1 sharpness augment. But what if we want to make an elemental hunting horn? Our brains would tell us that we want 4 rolls of elemental upgrades, but let's compare the actual hunting data. In this example, I'll be using the same equipment setup, but both using a fire hunting horn with 7 attack augments and a fire hunting horn with 3 attack and 4 elemental augments. With the fully attack augmented fire hunting horn, we saw the following: an average physical damage contribution of 53%, an average elemental contribution of 17%, and an average fixed damage contribution of 30%. Now, when we swap to the elemental augmented weapon, we saw an average of 50% physical damage, 23% elemental damage, and 28% fixed damage. Now, we expected to see a drop in both physical and fixed damage percentages because we're dealing more elemental base damage by comparison. And the net change between both averages is almost even, but here's the kicker. Our average DPS went down by about 5% on the elemental augmented weapon. The reason being is actually pretty simple. Reducing the amount of attack power our hunting horn has by opting for the elemental augments will exponentially reduce the amount of damage our physical attacks can do when they crit. And I know I'm using a Congalala here for reference, but I've tried this out on multiple Artian elemental horns across multiple monsters, and at this point I've seen very similar results across the board. So what does this mean? Well, if we want the best possible elemental hunting horn, our ideal setup would be 3 attack augmented Artian pieces all of the same element, and then rolling 4 additional attack augments and 1 sharpness augment for comfort. Okay, so let's move on to status. We know we want the 3 attack pieces to craft our Artian hunting horn, so the question again becomes the random attack versus status augments. And we're going to keep bullying this Congalala, but let's look at the numbers while we do. On the attack augmented hunting horn, the average physical damage came out to a 70% contribution, average fixed damage of 30% contribution, and average total status application coming out to be 2100 paralysis, translating to about 4 paras across the hunt. On the status augmented hunting horn, we see almost the same thing. 70% physical attack contribution, 30% fixed damage, but this time an average status contribution of 3100, translating to about 5 paras. But this time our average DPS across hunts dropped by about 10%, just to get 1 extra para, which is just not a worthwhile trade. Sleep was pretty much the exact same thing, 70% physical, 30% fixed damage, except we saw 3 sleeps and 4 sleeps respectively. Again, the 10% DPS loss just not being worth it. Now let's talk about the fun one, Blast. With an attack-augmented blast horn, we see the same 70 physical and 30 fixed, with an average of 20 blast procs across multiple hunts. But when we swap to a status-augmented blast horn, we see a drop down to an average of 65% physical and 35% fixed damage, and on average 30 blast procs per hunt, with surprisingly no change in average DPS. But there is a catch here. While the blast procs seem to be making up for our decrease in attack power, we are still lowering the amount of theoretical attacks that can crit over the course of the hunt, and for that reason I can't recommend focusing status augments on the blast hunting horn. Okay, now let's talk about Poison Artian Hunting Horn.